Okay, well, we're back with a new week of talking about film, and this week Gus picked Alfred Hitchcock.
Yes, I picked Alfred Hitchcock.
Why in the world would you pick
Okay.
Alfred Hitchcock?
Why in the world would I pick Alfred Hitchcock? Because I think of all the great directors, Hitchcock is my favorite.
Okay.
And the reason for that is I think I can read his own biography or autobiography through much of the major films, his psychological biography, the man that he would like to have been, the man he probably inside fantasized himself to have been, etc. Beyond that, what I like about him is that he disguised it under probably one of the least respected of genres, the mystery genre. And so he was sly in the sense that he fooled people into thinking. And he didn't really fool them because they are wonderful thrillers. But if you go beyond or beneath that, the subtextual element of it are extraordinarily disturbing, and all because they came out of the psychology of the complex psychology of who Alfred Hitchcock was.
Yeah.
That's my take on it.
I agree. I've been watching Hitchcock since I was a kid, so I love just him as an entertainer, and then as I've grown older, I've seen more, like you're talking about, the complexity behind it, the subtext behind all these stories. So what's your favorite Hitchcock film?
Okay, there are probably two. One everybody knows, and that is Vertigo.
I told you.
What?
You can't pick two.
Okay, one, Vertigo.
I'm just teasing. You can do it right now you want to.
I know. But let's limit it to one.
Okay.
And it would be Vertigo. And it was Vertigo for a long time. I actually didn't see Vertigo until somewhere in the 70s.
Oh, wow.
And this is somebody who thought he was a film buff, right? And the film wasn't available. And then they released a series of Hitchcock films that were owned by the estate. And Vertigo was in that grouping. I didn't see Vertigo in its initial release. And it was in that group, and I came away stunned by the picture. And the subtextual elements, again, began to haunt me. And as the years went by, I would go back and watch the film over and over again. I've read several books that deal with Vertigo and the subtextual elements. And since I'm going to expand and pick two, I would say the other is Notorious.
Okay. You're stealing my thunder.
All right? Because Notorious is just so cruel in its sexual politics.
Yes.
But by the same token, it's his best use of what they call the MacGuffin, or what he calls the MacGuffin that I've seen. And it also does something that is rare for a Hitchcock film, and that is it contains a wonderful performance by Claude Rains, an incredibly sympathetic performance, the villain role.
It's his most interesting villain.
I know. And when you watch a film, you walk away really feeling sorry for the guy. It also does something else. It subverts, and it's something Hitchcock liked to do, Cary Grant's public persona, because he's so unsympathetic in the character. He's so unsympathetic in his outlook, and so harsh in his treatment of both her and also the Claude Rains character, that it's a terrific mix of Hitchcock things. So what are your favorites?
Well, my favorite is Notorious.
Okay, so you put it above Vertigo?
Well, favorite.
Okay.
Again, I feel often unqualified to really argue best.
I know what you're saying.
I can see that Vertigo is his best. I wouldn't fight anyone on that. I think it may be his ultimate masterpiece. But just in terms of favorite, I absolutely love Notorious. And I should say, first, I watched, like I mentioned, I grew up on Hitchcock movies, right? When I first watched them, I loved North by Northwest. It's an adventure film, and then Rear Window, and then Vertigo. And when I first saw Notorious, I really did not like it. I thought, this is weird. Again, the cruelty of it, I go, what's going on? This unlikable character. And then I watched it a couple years ago, and I said, holy shit, this movie is sexy. This movie is mean. Like, it's everything that I like in a film now. And like you said,
also does a thing with time, where he jumps time from that first scene where she's a party girl.
Yes.
And then we're in South America after that, after the titles. And that's something that hadn't been done by anybody before.
Yeah. Yeah, he does some interesting stuff. Like you said, the Claude Rains performance is amazing. It's such a sympathetic villain. And the hero, Cary Grant, is totally unsympathetic, so it's a flip-flop. And Bergman is so sexy in it. And the movie just... Vertigo is sexy in a disturbing way. Notorious is just sexy and it's just a great spy romance. So anyway, that's the one that I enjoy the most. What you think is the most underrated?
Okay, far and away from me.
If you steal my choice.
Well, we'll see. I'm saying the wrong man.
Okay. Go for it.
And that is, I don't know how many people have seen it. Have you?
I haven't seen it.
Okay.
It's on my list of ones to see.
It's one of the it's probably the only time, I think, they advertise it that way, that Hitchcock went to a real situation and he shot the film almost like a dramatic documentary. And he used probably the most naturalistic of the Hollywood stars at the time for the lead. The only time they actually worked together, Henry Fonda. And he makes this story that as you watch it, true story about a man named Manny Ballestero, who was selected and accused of a crime he did not commit just because he happened to be in the wrong place, and what the man goes through. And when they show you the right man, finally, what's interesting is they don't even look alike, which I thought was a wonderful touch by Hitchcock. It just shows you general features can burn themselves into people's minds, and you can make that kind of mistake. But it's a film that requires more than one viewing.
And really appreciate it.
I really think it's something that people should see again. If they haven't seen it, they should. And if they have, they should look at it again, because it's a Hitchcock that is completely surprising. There are none of the usual Hitchcock touches at all.
I really want to see it. It's been on my list to see for a while. My choice, and I had a backup too, just in case you stole my choice.
Okay.
Because I thought there was a chance of it. I think we both like this movie. My choice is Marnie.
Okay.
That's his most underrated film. And looking at the order of his films, I think it might be, in my opinion, his last masterpiece. His last true masterpiece. Marnie is his second movie with Tippi Hedren right after The Birds.
Right.
And it stars her and Sean Connery. And it's about a thief who, a woman who's obsessed with stealing, and Sean Connery is a man who catches her, but instead of turning her in, he decides that he's going to marry her and cure her of her desire to steal things and other things. She's just a clearly disturbed woman. And I think here's my take on Marnie. I watched it again just to make sure that, I still felt the same way, and I think it's second to Vertigo in being his most psychologically complex film, because it's not only Tippi Hedren's character, who is this woman who's scarred by the past, and she wants to steal, and she can't have sex, and men can't touch her, who's complex. It's Connery who's actually the most interesting character in the film, because here's a man who goes against all common sense to try to save this disturbed woman, and he's got this savior complex, and I think that he's actually the most interesting character of the film. Is who is this man and why is he doing this? And it features, I think, watching it, I thought this is the kind of subtle performance by Connery that has not been recognized. Maybe one of his best. Should have gotten him a nomination. Should have gotten her a nomination. The film's, I can't remember the name of the screenwriter, but the film's dialogue, because it's unlike most Hitchcock movies, there are a lot of scenes of just long dialogue. I mean, Rope has it, but this is in that tradition. It could be turned into a play if someone really wanted to. And the dialogue is so witty and so on the money. So anyway, I really thought that Marnie is one that's not talked about enough.
No, I agree, and I wanted to reiterate because Connery's performance. The initial choice, and for both pictures, The Birds and for Marnie, were Cary Grant and Grace Kelly.
Okay.
And then both turned him down. Grace Kelly because she was the Princess of Monaco, and Cary Grant didn't want to work with an unknown when Tippi Hedren was put in the role. If you look at both Connery's performance and Rod Taylor's, they're very Cary Grant-esque, okay? But, and both actors do, I mean, they're not imitating Cary Grant, they're just finding their debonair side to perform out of. But with Marnie, I remember when I saw it, I thought what Connery did with that character, because I thought it was an incredibly different, difficult character to bring over and make you understand all the transitions and changes, that one, he did a better performance than I think Cary Grant probably could have done in the role. And like you, I felt it was incredibly underappreciated.
Yeah.
And at that point, Connery was the #1 star in the world because of the James Bond movies. But the James Bond movies kind of require that he hit all the primary notes, but doesn't require much, quiet moments, sotto voce, so to speak. But Connery proved that he could find a poetry in the role in this. And I agree with you that it probably is, because of the demands of the role, his most nuanced performance in a motion picture in his full career.
Well, it has the character has the one thing I think you once told me when saying something about creating characters as a writer that you need to think about is the perversity. That character has so much perversity.
Yes.
And Connery, you can tell he's a smart actor because he really understood it, and he's got it. There's so much subtext to what he's doing. So I'm glad you like the film too.
Oh no, I love the film.
Yeah,
I love The Birds too.
The Birds is great.
It's a wonderful picture.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next.
Okay, overrated.
Okay, this will come as
this is
surprise.
A little,
This is where we're gonna differ. Because I really feel North by Northwest is overrated.
Okay.
I have personally never fully warmed to North by Northwest. It seems too stylized, too arch almost, in its attitude. You know what I'm saying? It's constantly, I feel.
What do you mean by its attitude?
The whole perspective of the picture.
Okay.
Seems to be winking, saying, we're having a good time sending up this genre. The kind of spy thing. Cary Grant is playing a variation on Cary Grant's larger screen persona. Probably is the ultimate Cary Grant role. He's playing it. It's a little too much for me.
Okay.
And even Marie Saint is fine, but I just never thought she rose to the occasion.
Yeah.
As well as some of the other blondes. The Hitchcock blondes, Grace Kelly, particularly that particular role for me felt like it should be Grace Kelly.
Yeah.
I like Mason as the villain.
Yeah, Mason is really good in it.
But the plot turns also don't do anything particular for me. So that's my mind.
Okay. I'm not going to argue with you.
I
still like the movie.
I understand.
It's like we were just, we both just read this book, Henry Jaglom Has Lunches with Orson Welles.
Yes.
And they have a lot of moments like that where he says, Orson's saying, well, this movie's shit, Henry. And Henry goes, yeah, I know, but I like it. Yes. Like, you know what I mean?
What it really means is when you disagree with me, you don't know anything.
What?
So that's what it means.
That I don't know anything?
Yeah, that's what it means.
Okay, I see how it works. Well,
you have to show some respect for gray hair.
Gotcha. Sounds good. Well, the defenders of North by Northwest out there, I hope that you're enraged.
They come at me.
So this is not a controversial choice either, but necessarily. But my overrated pick is one film, but more an era of his work. I feel that his work in England is highly overrated in general, and there's some people that consider it to be the best era of his career and his American to be, and I completely disagree. I think that a lot of his work in England was not nearly as sharp, and he didn't really hit his stride until Rebecca, and then after that. And to me, what I wanted to point to is that the one supposed masterpiece of his English career, which is the 39 Steps, which is an okay standard thriller, but I've watched it a few times now, and I really don't see the masterpiece that everybody else sees.
I agree with you. I didn't even, to tell you the truth, consider the English period that much.
Yeah.
Simply because he really matured in the 40s and 50s. And that's why I said why I picked him was because that's when you began to see him through the film, his psyche.
Yeah.
And so I totally agree with you. I'll tell you one film that I could make an argument for both his best and most overrated is Psycho.
Okay, yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
I could argue both sides of it.
Yeah.
What I can't get around with Psycho, which is why I can't say it's an overrated picture, is that in the character of Norman Bates, with Tony Perkins' performance, we have to agree that Tony Perkins' performance informs that character. He created a character that transcended the movie.
Yeah.
And that's not easy to do. Kane transcends Citizen Kane, Charles Foster Kane.
Yeah.
And that's what makes for great literature. Ahab transcends the story of Moby Dick. Lear transcends King Lear, the play. And it's rare in cinema
that you can do
when a character transcends. I'm not saying it's a deep character, but the character resonates outside of the frame of that story. And so we look at people in life and we say, that's a Norman Bates.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like that. And that's why I can't say that it's like his most overrated film. The thing that bothers me about Psycho, and it's not Hitchcock's fault.
Is the ending?
No, it's people call it a horror story.
Oh, okay.
It is not horror. It is a crime story. Because everything that happens is plausible.
Yeah.
He explains it at the end, which is fine, but he explains it in plausible terms. It's, for me, horror is when it resonates in an otherworldly
that makes sense.
aspect, or the
That definition makes
paranormal.
sense. Well,
Yes,
what
sir.
he really does with that film is, like, Birds is a horror film.
Yeah. Yes.
Like, in
yes.
the sense that it's unexplained.
Exactly.
And there's some
Yes.
mysterious supernatural force
Precisely.
potentially that
Yes.
motivates the birds.
But not
But with this,
Psycho.
I see what you're saying. And I think where people get confused is that he shoots it like a horror
Yes,
film.
yes, he
in
does.
the sense that he misleads you into thinking that something may be going on, that the ghost of the
Yes,
mother or
right,
whatever,
yes.
you know. And
But
then
it's
in
not.
the end,
Yeah.
it's all explained.
Yeah,
So
it's,
no,
it's completely
it's a
clear.
thriller.
Yes, it's a real thriller, and it always bothers me when
That people describe it that
it's
way.
not just
Well, they
people
call-
I know, but
yeah.
I'm saying critics, and then you see it in books on horror.
Yeah.
Sometimes they even use images from it for the cover.
Yeah.
When I look back on Hitchcock, one of the things that makes him one of my favorite, and as I said, my favorite, personal favorite, is because, one, he had a long career. It's over 50 movies. And like the way you can look at Picasso's work, you can see periods. You know, Picasso
Yes.
had his blue period, he had his rose period, African influence period, his classicism versus surrealism period. And it's the same thing with Hitchcock, because you can really break him down like you did, first with the British period, and then the early American period, really starting with Rebecca,
Yeah.
which is a very atypical Hitchcock film. And it's interesting because it's one of the films that I use when people say, how could the Academy give an award for Best Picture but not give for Best Director?
Yeah.
They did last year with Argo.
Yeah.
I saw why.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And they did the same thing with Rebecca. It was his first American film. David O. Selznick got the Oscar.
Producer, yeah.
And Hitchcock didn't. And ultimately, after the Paradigm Case, Hitchcock moved away from David O. Selznick.
Yeah.
You had an autocratic producer telling you what to do.
Where would you say that period of
That
Hitchcock
period,
ends?
for me, ends when Notorious begins.
Okay.
You know? Because he tried several things. He had Spellbound and things
Yeah,
like that. But
yeah.
Notorious, And then he tried the experimental period. It really should start. This film is before Notorious. With Shadow of a Doubt. You see.
Yeah.
And then you get into real Hitchcock. Okay, which is Shadow of a Doubt is his favorite film.
Yeah.
And then Rope is an interesting experiment. What I want to say is the whole Hitchcock body is so worth looking at. And for somebody who wants to look at them really seriously, they should look at them by the decades. You know, look at the 40s and then the 50s and then the 60s. Yeah. And you'll get a real sense of American filmmaking at its best, studio work.
I agree. I thought it was just a side note on that, you know, at that end of his career, he's not working with Cary Grant anymore or Jimmy Stewart. You know, that's past. And he started to find these new leading men, you know, Taylor, Connery, Dern, and then tried with Paul Newman. Yes. And it would have been, I just wish he could. I wish he was still working today, because I'm wondering, would he have worked with Kevin Costner? Because like I've made the point before that I think Costner would be a great Hitchcock leading man. Yes. Would he work with Clooney? Would he work with, you know, like it would have been interesting to see him continue to go that, you know.
Well, you bring up something that I want to make clear too, is the statement that people have misunderstood since time began, that he called actors sheep or cattle. Okay? It was a misunderstanding of the quote. What he said to Rod Taylor was, let's lead some cattle or let's lead some sheep. And he meant the audience. That he was going to lead them in a direction. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But when you talk about it, and you actually pick the right actors for him, because Hitchcock always had trouble with the actors who come from a specific philosophy of acting. The method boys, as
Cliff.
they call them. He had the problem with Cliff. He had problems with Newman also working. But the actors you talked about, Costner is a generalist. Who was it you mentioned? Connery was a generalist, of course.
Clooney.
Yes, absolute generalists. They'll come with, a religious approach to the acting from the psychological perspective.
Exactly.
And when you look at the people he was most successful with, Cary Grant and James Stewart, they were absolute generalists. So was Henry Fonda, a generalist for him.
It's interesting that he didn't work with Fonda more. I mean, maybe they just didn't get the opportunity. But it's just interesting.
Yes,
because I think it would have been a good pairing.
It's a good pairing. The one time they did work together.
Do you have any final thoughts on Hitchcock that you want to share?
No, I go along with your thought that we wish that he was still working today. Working with some of the younger actors. I wish that young filmmakers who want to emulate Hitchcock not try to copy his style, but just his inspiration. Just adopt his inspiration, but not his style, because he was a one of a kind. And you're not going to get another carbon copy of him. I don't want another carbon copy of Hitchcock.
A lot of people make that mistake.
Yes,
they get excited about Hitchcock and they copy his style.
Yes.
And I would say, like Gus says, don't do that, and instead focus on what's going on beneath the style. And if you're going to emulate anything, emulate the notion of like working in a genre and having subtext underneath that,
deepening the genre completely, because that's what Hitchcock did.
Yeah, and that's the true that's what's so masterful.
As a matter of fact, I mean, his name has become part of the language, because we'll say something is Hitchcockian.
Yes, exactly.
Simply because that tells you how much he transcended and expanded the genre.
Well, next week we're going to be talking about, my choice will be Sidney Pollack.
That's an interesting choice.
I'd like to switch things up a little bit.
Sure. That's a very interesting choice.
Someone who's not talked about a lot in these kind of discussions, and I think he's worth highlighting. So
we will
see you next week.
Okay.
Bye.